listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Joni. On this week's episode, we chatted with Tim McConnehey, who is an international self-publishing expert who's been featured in Forbes, The Star, and other international publications. He's the founder and owner of Izzard Ink Publishing, which has helped authors to sell hundreds of thousands of books all over the world, including partnering with local publishers on 4 continents. Tim is also an author himself and wrote the book 10 Secrets to a Bestseller, an author's guide to self-publishing.
So Tim talked to us about the best practices for self-publishing success, the benefits of going wide, and how to pick the right people to work with you. So whether that would be an editor or a cover designer, he shares his tips on how to find the person that will make your book shine the best. So it was a great interview. Please keep listening.
Would you mind starting by telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Tim McConnehey. I run a company called Izzard Ink Publishing. I founded it in 2013, and our main goal is to help authors work with the best people in publishing. Our slogan's self-publishing is no longer publishing by yourself. And we try and put people together with great teams. Been in Forbes, The Star, many international publications as a collaborative publishing expert. We've helped authors sell, I think at this point, over 500,000 books. So it's really fun to watch authors' dreams and visions come alive. So that's why I love it, and that's why we've done it for so long.
So you're also an author. What made you decide to publish independently rather than going a traditional route?
You know, this was all started back with a Wall Street Journal article about ebooks. And I thought that there could be some money in it. And then I found an author, put all their works together, ebooks started making money. And then one thing led to another. And all of a sudden we had a plan where it's, why can't authors work with the best people who've published the best books? So I did that with my book. And by the time everything was done, I had the control, I had the vision, and I was able to do it myself. So that's why I self-published. About 70% of what makes a book successful, we can quantify. 30% we can't. It's just luck or catching the right trend or getting the right PR at the right time. So I find that's very interesting. So we work to really help iron out that 70% that we know will be successful.
Something that a lot of authors have to consider when they're starting out, or even throughout their career, is whether to publish their titles wide, which means make them available at all retailers, or whether to put them in an exclusive program like Kindle Unlimited. So your books that you publish are all wide, am I right?
They are. We ran so many tests on, did it make sense to go with one retailer? And it never did. Every single time the sales never made up for it. So we keep trying, we keep doing tests here and there, but I think of the 6 or so tests we've done with different titles and different years and different scenarios, it just hasn't worked out. You want to meet your reader where they find books. You don't want your reader to come, to you. And we worked with an author who had a website, and it was very obscure, and that's all they wanted to do was publish and fulfill from that website. And it just never worked. And so that small theory led to that whole thought that, we need to be as wide as possible and as many retailers as we can and meet our reader where they're at.
That's very much our philosophy at Kobo as well.
Just
making sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
No. And you guys, Kobo has great territories that they're experts in Canada, UK, Australia, that we could just never reach anywhere else. So great job.
Great. Thanks. I'll take that compliment, even though I have nothing to do with it.
Take it.
So part of your basic publishing company kind of helps authors connect with other service providers. So you were mentioning before about how you found a great editor for your upcoming work, but you also work with cover designers. So I was wondering if you could give our listeners some advice on what they need to look for when they're looking for an editor, what that editing process looks like, and then also what do they need to look for when they're looking for like a cover designer? Yeah,
it's all really important. Let's start with editing. We get too many people trying to what's the total cost? Where does this start? And where, how many thousands of dollars is it going to be to print? But really, we want to make sure that the content is viable and the best it can be to begin with. And how you do that is when somebody comes to us, we have two of our in-house editors review a book and come up with a manuscript evaluation based on the first few chapters. Do we think it's viable? And if it is, where are your next steps forward? Do you need, what type of edit do you need? Do you need developmental, line, which is mostly what it is, or do you need a writing coach in order to move forward? Once that happens and you know your pathway forward, we really suggest getting at least 3 trial edits. And that's exactly what it is. You just send it over, a couple thousand words, pay the editor a nominal fee. Usually it's anywhere from, around $100 range to put it together. And then you see, without any input, does the editor, A, have passion for your project, believe in it, and do they have the skills that they say they do? If you find one you like, then you always go out and verify them with Izzard Ink. We've worked with a whole bunch of editors and we've vetted them ourselves. If you're going at it yourself, make sure you vet them, talk to other clients. That is a big one. If you have an editor, talk to them and say, hey, do you have anybody that I can call and talk to about how their process went? If they say no, ask other questions, be a little bit leery about that.
Mm-hmm.
Cover designers, same thing, but that one's a little bit more of what's their process. What we do at Izzard Ink is we have what's called a cover information sheet. We sit down with the author and we define where does their book go in the market, what category, what's the competition, we go over marketing pitch, what's your tagline. We want to know where this is going to fit. And once we have that, then we can go to a designer and say, here's some structure, here's what we're looking at, here are some covers that the client really likes that's currently out there. What can we make this book look like? So it's really a lot about the process and then finding somebody who's worked in the industry and has done books that you like.
I think that point about making sure it fits into the market is huge, because you can get a really beautiful cover, but if it doesn't say anything about what the book is, it's not going to work. And there's interesting, I'm always surprised by how many almost set in stone rules there are. Things like thrillers usually have a lot of yellow in them, or I don't know, it's the only one I can think of right now, but there are more rules than you think, right?
There are. And it's impossible for somebody who doesn't specialize in cover design to do it, to come up with a great cover. We tried doing it, a do-it-yourself cover, a general graphic design cover, and somebody who was an art director at Penguin Random House. And by far, the art director sales did very, very well. The title was picked up by BookBub, where the other ones weren't. It just is so important to make that happen. And don't limit your designer either. Don't say you're not paying for somebody to put things exactly where you want. Time and time again, we have authors come to us with a very specific vision, and we usually provide them 3 to 5 concepts for a cover, and we'll give them, one exactly what they want, and then we try and do 2 others, letting our designer be more creative. And almost always they pick the cover that our designer did, being a little more creative. They don't know what they want until they see it. And I love that. That's what I love putting together.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a designer that says that she has a certain kind of client she calls a napkin client, because they don't want her to design anything. They do a doodle on a napkin and they say, okay, you do this. And she's like, well, that's not how it works. You're paying me so that I can come up with something. But I think that's really important. The author, if you're a great writer, it does not necessarily translate to being a great cover designer. It's a very different thing.
No, one of the analogies we use about that is I was coming back from Honolulu one time and I thought, what if the airlines acted like a self-published author? They would take the tickets, they'd fly the plane, they'd do the maintenance, they'd do the ground crew. I added up all the hours that it would take just to qualify and be certified. And you're talking multiple lifetimes. So we don't expect that out of our airlines, but for some reason, when we think about publishing a book by ourselves, we have to do everything by ourselves. But I don't think that's the case. I think you need to lean on people who are experts. We try and find the author that has the mentality that they can work with somebody who has other ideas. It doesn't work with a designer when they just say, here you go, put this together, put it in Photoshop and let me have it. It doesn't. And that shuts down a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas. So authors really need to have that collaborative approach. Ask open-ended questions, such as why is it designed like that? Or why did you take the cover in this direction? And learn and understand.
So I think that editing and cover design in particular are two services like you should never ever try to DIY unless that's what you do. But there are other aspects of publishing that some authors get very good at teaching themselves, like people can get very good at formatting or marketing. Are there any other aspects that you would say leave it to the professionals? You probably won't be able to teach yourself well enough.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to go against what you just said there with interior design.
Okay.
You can do it, but there's so much that goes into it that you just don't know. We have a 40-point quality check to the point where if a sentence starts with 3 lines, start with the same letter, that we go back because your eye will catch that and it will all of a sudden not look professional. If it starts 3 lines, all with the same letter starts or ends like that, we do that. Running headers, make sure it hits your design specs. We design a book much like an architect would a page. So we say the header should go, or the chapter heading should go down this much. This is where the page number goes. And to put it on several hundred pages becomes quite tedious. I know in InDesign you can do master pages and stuff like that. But we have a whole team that spends about 5 to 10 minutes per page just making sure everything looks right. And it's a big difference. We've done some testing where we've sent it over to our professional designer who's worked at Penguin Random House as a senior designer for over 10 years. She is phenomenal with designs. But we're all human. We miss things. And that's where a good quality check for your interior will make all the difference in your book. So I would actually leave that one to professionals.
I had actually forgotten about a lot of that, but I remember going through it in publishing school. But that was very much for print books. And a lot of books on Kobo were working with ebooks and reflowable text where you can't always control things like the kind of things that you're talking about. How does that work in terms of ebooks versus print?
Yeah, what we try and do is we understand that there's a good still 50% of the market that likes print books. But most readers want the ebook to look like the print book. And so we almost always take it straight from a print design and put that back into an ebook format with all those things. We still keep all the headers, all the decorative elements, the fonts where we can. But that's really what we try and do. And you can get away with it, trying to format your own ebook. But I did it, and I missed a lot of technical things. And I think, 7, 8 years, maybe 6, 7 years ago, that's what I did. I think I got carpal tunnel from just formatting and learning and understanding. So even with that, if you want it to look the best and not have errors or really perform well for your reader, I would probably have somebody professionally do that as well.
Steph definitely sees a lot of that stuff, right?
I help a lot of authors with their EPUBs, telling them where they need to fix stuff. And
their errors we just don't really know about. They're tough to find out. So yeah, that's difficult. That's where I just say, just hand it to a professional. Ebooks, converting or getting into an ebook really isn't that expensive when you look at it. And it makes people like Kobo happy when everything's formatted exactly how they want it. And it makes the reader happy. And
it does.
That's what we want.
Someone was said to me that you shouldn't be noticing formatting when you're reading a book. It should just be an enjoyable experience. And I think a lot of people forget about that when they're doing their books. But I did have a question that just came to me about editing. How often do you find editors will reject a project to work on, or even a cover designer? Does that happen often?
Sometimes it does, but it will with mostly. So we vet our authors pretty well. If we don't think they're a good fit for the collaborative model, we just won't take them. So that's where our rejection happens, is up front. Some editors will, and cover designers will just reject because the author's difficult to work with, or it's going to be a lot of work to put the project together, or they don't have passion. I wouldn't take that personally. I actually like it when our editors will just tell me, hey, this isn't something I'm wanting to work on right now, because you want somebody who has that same vision, same drive, same passion for your project as you do. And that's half the battle, is finding that. You can't teach passion. You really can't. So I really like the people who have turned them down. Really, our sweet spot with designers are folks who have been in the industry for 20, 25 years. They know it. They got into work with self-published authors, and they got back into freelancing in order to do it. So you want to find somebody just like that.
That's good advice.
So I kind of derailed you a little bit on that, but you were going to talk about marketing.
Yeah, best practices are what authors can do. Realistically, people like the authors out there marketing their book. We've had some authors who want it hands off. It's difficult to sit there and be on phone calls or radio interviews. It's scary. It really is. But we have folks who will do media training if that's something that they want to go forward with. You need to prepare yourself. How do you go out and get book signings? What about doing some legwork there? We're working on a project for a children's book. It's a Tooth Fairy book. And it's interesting to talk to the author and just ask about the network and say, who do you know? What organizations have you been involved with? And being just retired, he's got 30, 40 years in the industry. And so we've been able to come up with a great marketing plan for him and his book that took just a couple of hours of chatting. But there's a lot of legwork that he can do to make that happen. So really look at your marketing dollars. Where are you spending them? Can you quantify the results? Meaning, are you just paying a retainer model PR person to just try and get it done? Or are you paying for specific results? We like to see authors pay for specific results and see a return. If you're not, really walk away and try and do more yourself. Find the networks, become an expert, talk to folks in the field, especially with nonfiction. And I think that's really a lot of do-it-yourself type things that authors can handle and should.
And what are some of the other things that they should not ever try to DIY? Translation, cover design, editing. Those would be my top 3, I think.
Yeah, we've worked with how we do things when it comes to translation is we try and partner with a great publisher in a local market. So for example, our book, The Naked Communist, Exposing Communism and Restoring Freedom, has been around for years, and it's done well here in the United States. We had it picked up in Brazil last year, but we specifically had our contract with a reputable publisher down there. And we had everything spelled out in our contract with how it was going to be translated, the double translation method, make sure that they can get reviews and they have what they need from the author in order to make it successful over there. And they've done really well at that, even to the point where the book went to a lot of the cabinet members for Brazil's president. And that's something you just can't replicate on your own being in a foreign country.
Definitely not. I was just wondering more on the business side. What do you think some mistakes you made early out in starting your company? And then what do you think you did really well? The hard question, sorry.
No. I'm laughing because I'm going to be 100% honest. Probably should never have started it in the first place. I did not know how hard it would be. I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I knew business. I knew financials in my previous life. I trained financial institutions with assets of $300 million and below. That's what I did. So I knew that. I had to learn a new industry. I learned a lot from success and failure, a lot from testing. Does this work or does this work? And what's getting us the results? So the other thing is we have a great saying and it's success is mastering failure. If you want to be successful at something, it's how you deal with failure. And I think we dealt with a lot of failures early on to help shape where our company is at today. learn from our mistakes. That's why we have our 10 Secrets to a Bestseller book and accompanying workbook. We want folks to learn from the mistakes that we made. We show them in there. We show mistakes our authors has made, dumb things that we've done. Learn and just trust experts is what I probably should have done when I first started.
Do you like it better now?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I really do enjoy it. I love watching an author come to us with just an idea and then putting a whole team together to make that happen. We have a middle grade, a book that's coming out. It's from a librarian in Massachusetts who's just been working for probably 30 years as a librarian. She knows the middle grade segment really well. She came to us with a book, and we paired her with one of the editors who worked on The Hunger Games, another cover designer that was really phenomenal. And I've just really enjoyed watching that come together. The other thing I've loved is watching the writers learn and progress when they have that, what I call elite editor behind them. Their writing becomes much better. It becomes a personal improvement thing for us and our company of, yeah, our writers are much better because we have given them the help and the tools that they need. Our editors love working with the folks at the bottom, which really are the authors in many of the traditional presses. There isn't teams of people to please. It's just the author, which I really like that.
Where do you find your editors and your other people that you work with?
Publishing is really a tight-knit field. So we found a few that we know. We gave them a shot with a couple of our own projects or personal small things to kind of vet them, see how they work. Then it's just asking them, who do you know that does well here? Or who do you know here? They're very connected. One of our cover designers put me in touch with the executive editor for HarperCollins, who'd worked with many stars about 20 years ago. And I just couldn't believe the type of stuff that she handled and that she's available for folks to work with, even as a ghostwriter. I couldn't believe it. So really, it's networking.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is kind of publishing in a nutshell. You've been in publishing since 2013, which we know in this industry is basically a lifetime. How have you seen the industry change, and how have you had to adapt over the last 7 years?
Yeah, we've seen it really. I see that the traditional model is really struggling, meaning it's hard to invest in an author and groom them and see if you can take them from the bottom to the top. That's very difficult, and we're seeing that done less and less and less. It's more, how many folks do you have on social media? Are you an influencer? Are you not? And then a traditional press will look at it. I just don't see that model's as stable as it once was. It's also more difficult to get published. And that's where we changed from when we first started of just working with anybody and trying to just make it happen to being very specific about the authors we take on, the editors we work with, the cover designers, and the process. I worked for 5 years just making sure our process was smooth in every single area and very author-centric. So I think that's changing. It really is going back more to the authors being in charge. I think that's a good thing.
I agree. It's a great opportunity for authors that may not have been picked up by traditional publishers, but who still have an audience for their books. I think we see a lot of that in indie publishing, and it's one of the things that's really cool.
It is. We've watched an author who came to us with a book get a Publishers Weekly starred review on his first novel.
Oh, awesome.
But that's the kind of stuff that just gets passed over by traditional presses because it's really difficult.
Do you have any predictions for what might happen over the next 5 or 10 years in publishing? It's a hard one.
Yeah, I really believe that publishing is going to flatten some more. Technology is going to be used. We've started to integrate a little bit of AI into the reading of our manuscripts to help us and our editors figure out what's good and what's not. but it's not foolproof at all. I foresee that getting ironed out more. I believe more authors will take this into their own hands. I believe that books really need to be polished and utilize the help that's out there. I think it was about 1.6 million self-published books last year, or in 2018 alone. So that's a huge market that you need to stand out from. So really understanding publishing as a first-time author, understanding the publishing landscape will be more and more critical as well. Going back to where does your book sit? Treating your book like a business will also be key. You need to have that same marketing stuff, manage your finances, see what's working, what's not, quantify marketing. All that stuff will play a key role as we see things evolve in the next 5 to 8 years or so.
And where do you see audiobooks fitting into all of this? We haven't really talked about that other than AI, which is an interesting one.
Audiobooks are still going to continue to do well. That's one of the fastest growing segments. If you look out there, I believe that there's going to have to be some adjustment in the marketplace. I don't think a company such as ACX can continue to, what I would say, I mean, let's just say it, they're price fixing. An author can't get in there and set their own price. There's a lot of money that goes to ACX, and they get paid more than the author does. And then there's the retailer portion. So I see that kind of getting worked out a little bit, much as ebooks have in the past, where they take 35 or 40% or 30 to 35% is what the retailers take. But I see their popularity gaining. But I also see it more important to find that right narrator and that person who's done it before. We have one that's done many books for top publishers, and John Grisham and other great folks like that. And finding a key narrator that you can even tag on to their network of the people who like a narrator is going to be key. You could have the best content, but if you have lots of breaths or pauses or something squeaky going on, the audio just won't work. So audiobooks will continue to sell. We'll see their market share increase, but only really for the books that are done well.
Do you have any opinions on like AI read books?
We've talked about this on the podcast before. It's one of those things that I am so suspicious of, but I keep being told by people who are much more expert than me, like, it's really actually quite good.
Sometimes you can't tell.
Yeah, that's what you told me.
I don't know. I haven't tried it, but I do believe that AI could probably be a better narrator than myself. So it's a great option for maybe folks who are just dabbling to see if their book can do it or not. But I still trust the professionals.
Yeah, they might not be as good as the professional, but they might be better than me. I do believe that.
But if you could give one piece of advice that every author should know, either in regards to publishing or to like starting their own business, what would that be?
I think it goes back to that phrase that we have, success is mastering failure. Learn from your failures. Don't make the same mistake twice, but understand that failure is going to happen. And pick yourself off, brush it off. Do what you can, keep at it. Don't keep doing the same thing, tweak it a little bit, figure it out, but really work hard. And if you want to be successful, you can, but surround yourself with the best people out there in order to make that happen.
I think that is good advice for publishing and life.
Yes, now we're on to my favorite question. I'm assuming you've had some free time over the last couple of weeks, but what have you been loving lately?
It can be anything at all. Books, podcasts.
I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and 2 2-year-olds.
Steph, you were wrong about the free time.
I was so wrong.
You were so wrong with that. I would love to know what free time of an angry dad not screaming to pick up toys looks like. But I think the last few weeks have actually given us time to grow together, to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, tell my kids all the time that I'm not perfect and make mistakes. And it's just been fun to watch them beat each other up and work out their differences. I think that's kind of where I've been probably the last 2 years.
Now I'm wondering where you put these kids over the last hour. We haven't heard a peep.
I know, they've been quiet.
I know. Luckily, we scheduled this where 3 of them have naps, and one of them,
perfect.
I just put her in front of the iPad and said, "Here you go." So,
you're tired. I can only imagine.
But yeah, it's been fun. Really, the last few weeks has helped me understand more too about where publishing is going to go. I'm excited to see the changes happening, not only with healthcare, but with people and how they come together and help each other. It really is about helping the author, not just getting paid from the editor or paying an editor, but it's really, truly finding somebody who shares that vision. And I think we're starting to see more people share that vision about other things that and other events that have happened over the past few weeks.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was great. Really interesting.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're looking for a link to Tim's book, we'll include it in our show notes. And if you're looking to grow your self-publishing career, head over to kobowritinglife.com.
This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DePlacido. This episode was edited by Kelly Robotham. Music was provided by Tearjerker, and special thanks for Tim for being a guest on our podcast. If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.